This is the only place in the United States where the Islamic call to prayer can be heard in the streets. Hamtramck, a suburb of Detroit, Michigan, is in many ways a quintessentially American place. For over 100 years, it has offered refuge to immigrants, first Polish and now Muslim. But since US President Donald Trump came to power, life for America's 3.4 million Muslims has become increasingly difficult. Civil rights groups have documented a spike in Islamophobic attacks.
Where the chicken? Where's the chicken? Wallah. As Trump got elected, things got more difficult for people here. It really did. You've seen the hatred really come out after the election. You know, you hear you're not American all day. Are you here legally, or should we call Trump? You know, like these kind of jokes. One day would be that, and the next day would be, oh, are we ever gonna meet your wife, or does she wear the ninja thing? And it's like, is it a joke anymore?
Another suburb of Detroit with a high concentration of Muslims is Dearborn. In the first 10 days after Trump's victory, civil rights group the Southern Poverty Law Center reported close to 1,000 hate-fueled attacks and acts of intimidation. Dearborn is home to the biggest mosque in North America.
Because we are the biggest mosque, we receive a huge amount of report from other people. Individuals being attacked. We have had this kind of thing. And the mother was coming out of one of the shopping centers with her children, and somebody decided to reverse the car into the mother and the children. She missed them the first time, she drove forward and did it again. So this kind of things indicate that we really have a problem. Xenophobia is the inability of a society to create space for the other. People think that it was purely Trump, but it was a theme running right across the Republican Party candidates. All of them were competing with each other, trying to beat the other person to see who can be more xenophobic or Islamophobic.
NAJAH BAZZY's family has been in the US for generations. She runs an NGO which helps marginalised women and children. NAJAH says that Trump's anti-Muslim rhetoric has fueled xenophobia.
I consider myself a daughter of Detroit. The family's been in America 126 years. I'm very uncomfortable for the first time ever in my own skin in my country of origin. I don't like this idea that I can only be Muslim, or I can only be American, or I can only be an Arab.
I usually think all this crap.
The political rhetoric, I believe, has uncovered some very deep racism that we've not yet been able to rid ourselves of as a country. It's elevated a sense of white privilege and supremacy. And the language and rhetoric that comes out of the mouth of the most powerful person in the world, I believe, has caused damage in this country for years and years to come.
Amy DOUKOURE, a lawyer for civil rights group the Council on American-Islamic Relations, is attending an event for Muslim American community leaders. CARE documented a 57% increase in anti-Muslim incidents from 2015 to 16 during the electoral campaign and predicts a further increase for 2017. FBI agents are present at the meeting. American Muslims are constantly under government surveillance. For many, this creates an uncomfortable climate of suspicion. Amy's family has just bought a suburban home in Canton, Michigan.
We're in the process of moving, so we've been remodeling the house. Thanks, Bilal. Trump's intent really is to make it uncomfortable for Muslims to be here so that we can't fully engage in the American dream. How many juice boxes are you drinking today? That's only your second one? I'm the staff attorney for CARE Michigan. We are the nation's leading Muslim civil rights organization. Trump is very open about his Islamophobia, his anti-Muslim agenda. I think that everything that he's saying is, and the policies that he's enacting, is like a patent violation of the First Amendment to, further the Christian faith while casting a shadow of a doubt and disparaging the Islamic faith, which is exactly the ideology that the First Amendment of the Constitution was enacted to prevent. And this is my husband, Maury. He's from Ivory Coast, West Africa. No, he wasn't in trouble. So that's my mom and my stepdad. They're not Muslim, so I converted almost 14 years ago now. At first, it was a big shock, of course, but now it's my mom, like my biggest defender. I was practicing in private practice last year, and some guy thought it was necessary to stop in the middle of the street and tell me he cannot wait for Trump to deport me. And he cannot wait till I go back to where I came from. It was very upsetting to me. And my response to him was like, where would you like me to go? I was born here. My parents were born here. There's nowhere for me to go. So I guess you're sort of stuck with me, you know?
Back in Hamtramck, residents are trying hard to build their American dream. Many have been affected by the Trump administration's ban, which restricts travel to the US from several Muslim-majority countries, including Yemen.
We are celebrating the grand opening of Game Zone with Wafi and Marwan, two locals. They have been here throughout their childhood and wanted to open something for the community and somewhere where kids can come and hang out. My dad came here with probably $50. My father worked 2 jobs and he was sleeping 4 hours a day. My grandfather was, one of the originals. When the auto industry boomed in Michigan, he came to Michigan. The Trump travel ban affected a lot of people. And what's crazy is the ban was all in the countries. None of them had a terrorist ever come from any of those countries. Like Yemen, for example, why? They've never done anything to any other country, but they're on the ban.
It wasn't Trump that brought that ban. It was House Resolution 158, I believe, during the Obama administration that came out exactly with the same numbers of countries to be banned. But the only thing was that they didn't implement it. And I remember those days, we immediately contacted our politicians here. He said, well, this is there, nobody's going to implement it. What happened when Trump came to power, he used extrajudicious kind of power to force that through, and people attribute it to Trump. So both parties are to be blamed for this kind of mindset.
The United States is a country of immigrants, but now the Trump administration is shutting its doors on refugees. In early 2017, Trump temporarily banned Syrian refugees from entering the US.
We do serve a large volume of refugees who really wanted a place to just live in peace and harmony, and then once they arrived, the political rhetoric was really pretty much, you're not wanted. America's still a safe haven compared to what they've come from, but at the same time, it's not the same as when my grandparents immigrated. I'm consciously aware that there is danger, and it also builds a sensitivity in me for others who have had to struggle before and what they've had to go through when they were stigmatized in our country, whether they were the Irish Americans or Italian Americans or African American. So I'm sure to stand up now and to make sure that we have as much equity and equality as we can in our country.
كانت أول شيء صعب علينا إنه نجي على أمريكا بالنسبة لأمي وأبي.
It was difficult for us to come to the States because of my mum and dad, and we left my siblings there. But the thing is, we had to come and build a future, especially as I have 2 young kids. Syria may never go back to what it was, and we may never go back to Syria. I had a dream to grow up and be a famous soccer player and become an international player. Halfway through, my dream just stopped. And we were hoping that my siblings would come here and do the interviews, but with the current policies just stop refugees from coming here. This has been really hard for us, and it's really affected our family, to be honest. Anybody would wish that his whole family could be reunited. Even President Donald Trump, his kids are always around him. I wish they could reconsider the Syrian refugee policies. Their lives ended in Syria. They don't have a future. Their kids are going to grow up as refugees.
ناس هدول انتهت حياتهم بسوريا، ما عاد لهم مكان يقعدوا فيه، ما عاد لهم مستقبل، أطفالهم عم تكبر ببلاد اللجوء.
The Trump administration's policies, deemed xenophobic by many, are already starting to affect other minority groups. Radio host Fatima Salman tries to give them a voice.
Welcome to Between the Lines. I am your host, Fatima Salman. Thank you for tuning in. We're talking about what's going on in Metro Detroit with the ICE deportations.
And there is another community that is being targeted by the Trump administration, the Chaldean Christians. Ironically, many of them even voted for Trump in the last election cycle.
There were a number of deportations, well over 100 people, and you guys are both on, and you're Chaldean. Explain what happened. Where were you? What were you doing when all this happened?
We found out that ICE was starting to do raids in the community. It got worse and worse to the point where we were hearing stories of guys getting picked up on their way to their daughter's baptism at church on the east side in Sterling Heights. Our most prominent restaurant, Ishtar restaurant, was raided, guns drawn, and you're just like, why?
Nobody talks about the human part of it, families being ripped apart. They don't hear about the tears. You are listening to Between the Lines with Fatima Salman. Don't go away because we have a lot to talk about. The Voice of Detroit.
Imam KAZEROONI has a warning about what happens when populist government policies fuel hatred of minorities.
Unfortunately, we happen to be the current other within the society. If you look at the history, before us it was the Jews, the African American, the black, and so on. We really need to learn a lesson from history that once injustice starts to develop and take shape, it's a matter of time to engulf others that at this stage it's not dealing with them. It's only a matter of time.
As incidents of Islamophobia continue to increase here in the US under the Trump administration, so do other forms of racial bigotry.